All right, how we doing, guys? Good to see you guys. I think, number one, just getting back from training camp, what a awesome place to throw a training camp, you know, when you're out in Oxnard, and the setup, the environment, what a huge advantage that was for us. And so getting back's been good to just get back into things, but one thing that hadn't changed was still trying to push hard on a number of things, and one being communication. I don't know how many of you watched the program, but it's called The Kings, and it's about a fight, you know, documentary from Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns and Roberto Duran and Marvin Hagler. And in that piece, I took a few clips out to show communication, you know, almost from coach to player. It was Angelo Dundee to Ray Leonard, and it was Emmanuel Stewart to Thomas Hearns, and the information that you need to have in those moments and how critical that is. So it's one I would definitely recommend anybody to watch. But it, you know, set back in the 80s, and for all you 70s and 60s babies, it'd be good. For the older guys, the young ones, that you may not get it. But it's an excellent program. And the thing I liked about you know, here in Dundee, saying the exact things that you need to hear in that moment. And so for us, that's in a 2-minute, that spot. And so even for me, you know, being up in the press box, like how clear on this thing in this moment that it has to be. And I think that's what, you know, playing winning football is about, in the moment, the right communication, the right clarity. And we still got a long way to go, but I'm pleased with the effort that the guys are making. But certainly a lot to gain for us, you know, over the next 11 or 12 days with 2 more games and more moments and more opportunities. And so I love this time of year for the developmental players, especially because there's a lot of guys fighting for their football lives. And I think you get to see what someone's best looks like in these environments. So I've always had a lot of fun in the preseason games, and you know, it'll be another, usually they're wild endings and, you know, things that come down to it, and I expect that again this weekend.
A lot of your players have talked about how they feel good with how the installs are going and where they are at this stage. One, how do you feel about where they are right now? And two, coming off of last year, how much of what you've been doing is designed to help build confidence early in the system, or is that just, does that just come from the repetition and hitting the points like communication?
Sure, and I can't comment to last year's, but what I can talk about is, you know, just putting a system in place, and you know, the hours and the reps that you need doing it. I would say usually playing faster has a lot to do with trust. You know, like, one, you got to trust, you know, your training that, okay, I know the call, I know how to execute it. You got to be able to trust your teammate. You know, he holds a certain leverage so you can play. And then the last deal, and probably the most important one, is you got to trust yourself. You know, like, I put the work in, I know how to do it, now I can go execute this call. And so through the spring and through the first couple weeks of training camp, it's finding all, you know, the unique things that a player has. And now that I've kind of seen that ability with some players, say, okay, here's a special role for this one, here's a special role for this one, this would be an excellent call for this player. And now, within the system, you get to see guys working on specific things, the jobs they're going to actually do in training camp. I mean, excuse me, when the regular season starts. Sometimes you have to do them in a job to say, okay, that might not be his, but you have to find out. And I think that's what the preseason practices and the preseason games allow you to go do. You put people in situations and find out, I think this could be a real strength of this player, but let's go find out. And so we've been making a lot of progress on that. Effort in that part has been on point of what I'd like to. The tackling's been good, but we got a long way to go in terms of creating the speed that we'd like to play, the physicality that we'd like to play, the amount of takeaways that we hope to create. So keep ratcheting up a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and that's, to me, what the goal of the next, you know, 2 weeks are for us. More speed, more takeaways, and if we get to that space, that means we're playing fast, and that's usually a byproduct of knowing where to go and arriving there, you know, violently, knowing that, hey, this is the moment that I'm going to take my shot, and having that confidence to do it.
What do you say for Millie Hooker?
Can you repeat the question?
Millie Hooker, and how much you want to get him some action?
Yeah, we're hopeful that that will take place this weekend. He's had a good week, kind of getting his first full week under, you know, underneath them, calls and reps and some padded practices. So mentally, he's really on it, and you can tell this is a bright football player, because he came in and, you know, right off the bat, you know, put the extra work in so he could, you know, put himself in a position to show what he can do. So we're looking forward to evaluating him.
You feel like you're running out of time a little bit just to see what you want to see out of your guys defensively?
No, I don't think we're running out of time, because I think I'm hopeful like this is not an ending point, you know, that we're just going to keep getting better and better and better as we're going. So there's not like a line of demarcation to say, you know, this is only as good as we can get. I'd say, the hell with that. We should get a lot better as we're going. So I know this is a standard of where we're at, but I think as you go, the best of the best get better as you go, and I anticipate that being the case for us.
Creating all these packages for all these different guys, all the different skill sets, you kind of feel like a mad scientist. You got a lot of things to tinker with. I mean, with you look at safety, you got Hooker, and you got KZ, and those guys, and you different linebackers, and mix and matching up.
You sound like you stay up late at night just like I do, of thinking of the packages, different reasons. Okay. Duly noted. All right. But I do like to think about the players and the new ones as well, you know, not just, you know, a free agent or, you know, a draft pick, but all the unique things that a player can do. And we're fortunate that there's a lot of different packages that you're going to play against in the NFL. You know, this team's going to feature more tight ends. This one's going to be, you know, more wide receivers. This running back has certain stuff, and not everybody's qualified to do all the jobs, you know, especially when you're playing matchup, you know, defense where you want to guard a guy and play him man-to-man. It's different, you know, when I'm playing in a zone, you know, I'm playing off, but when you have to go challenge somebody, you want to have the skill set to do that. So I think, you know, Mike and Jerry and Steve have done a good job of defensively, you know, allowing the roster to be fluid enough that we have versatility, because I think when you go through, you know, the regular season and postseason, it's not rinse and repeat in every game. You know, there's certain players that if we don't do something here, this guy can wreck the game. So you better have enough people that can match up or play a coverage or a technique that you need to do to win.
Dan, when you think of traits you're looking for in a corner, how highly would you rate the ball skills? And when you've got a corner like Trayvon or like Maurice Kennedy with receiver background,
Yep.
how does that influence how you coach them?
Yeah, super high on the list of priorities, you know, for that position, because there's going to be many moments where you're going to have to, we call it catching the flash of the ball, you know, like I turn and it's right there. So having ball skills at that position is definitely at a premium. And not only that, but you're going to get opportunities to take the ball away, which changes the game. So to me, it's one of the highest parts of that position. You have to have speed, obviously, that's one of the traits, but ball skills would be right there with it.
With Kennedy working inside, it's hard to find good slot corners, and you've got two with Jordan Lewis and Kennedy and Burton working in there. Is there going to be any attempt to give Kennedy some time outside?
Yes. Yep. There definitely is part of that, and I would say stay tuned.
Dan, have you flipped corners in the past, or is that something you just
Not a lot that we flipped, but I'll probably be more into that, you know, moving forward. Just, you know, when there's a matchup and a thing that you want to see, and certainly with, you know, Trayvon and the length that he has, you know, there's going to be some moments that we'll want to do that. Sometimes you don't match and you can put a double on someone else and this person singled. But I didn't do a lot of matching in the past. We'd played quite a bit of zone, so you stayed left and right. And an occasional, we'd, you know, find a guy that, hey, you want to play on this down, go match him and play him. But it's something that we've worked a little bit in camp so far.
What roles do you envision for Jalen in all the stuff that you're doing?
Sure. Well, I think number one, as a linebacker and leading and communicating, you know, through the whole group. But past that, our base package, the nickel package. So, you know, with four guys, we're working in, you know, into different ways. It won't be, you know, just only this package. You know, all of them just about play in each one. Just different field position, different down and distances is kind of how I've gone about it. And we'll get closer into those roles as the season progresses. But at this point, we're just kind of playing them all in, you know, almost like in a rotation.
He was a guy last year that hardly ever came off the field. He was like 98% of the snaps.
Yep.
Is that number too high for any linebacker in how you
No,
envision it?
no. I think, like, you know, every circumstance is different, but, you know, you have to also adapt to, you know, how the roster shapes out and how you utilize good players. And Jalen's an excellent player, so we're certainly going to find ways to utilize him. And we feel strongly about Leighton. We feel strongly about Kiki. We feel strongly about Micah. So, you know, like, let's find the things that they do best, and then let's try to put them in those spaces as often as we can, and we'll get the best version of all of them. And that's really how I look at it.
Jalen going from 98% snaps to whatever this total will be, but would stand to be considerably less
Yeah.
than 98%. That's an adjustment for any player. How have you seen him respond to the outlook of such a...
He's been excellent. He really has been. I've been super impressed by him almost since the time, you know, I got a chance to visit with him. We spent some time together, just the two of us, kind of talked about history, talked about, you know, his background of playing. and then talking about what it's going to look like moving forward. So I've just tried to be open in terms of the communication of how we're trying to feature everybody, but he has just been outstanding. He's been somebody that I definitely lean on for insight, where we're at, how we're doing, knowledge of it, what's been too much, what's not enough. So he's been an excellent communicator with me.
What kind of training camp and preseason do you feel he's had?
Yep, from the whole time, all the way back to the offseason, I've really said, I think I might have even talked about it earlier, I feel a difference in his speed. I just feel like he's worked so hard on that. His stride length feels to be over. He's covering more ground. I saw it in the Rams practice. That was one I just felt it. And since that time, when I see it, I bring it up to him, man, to say, hey, the speed is on point. He really trusts what he's doing and allows him to play really fast. And so I've been impressed by it.
How different of a different defensive coordinator, or maybe similar, do you think, to your Seattle days?
How similar am I to?
Or different?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good question. I would say probably a little bit of both. So during my time there, I certainly had a vision of how we'd like to play, and then tried to make that come to life. Through my time in Atlanta, I would hope, and even through last year, you have some experiences to draw back on to say, okay, how can we do it better? How can we do it a little bit differently? So anytime you have some time to grow and hopefully get better, you can do that. But I would say a lot of the formula would feel the same, but I wouldn't say all the calls are exactly the same. But the process of how to get there, that part feels very familiar.
And you were already obviously you're on the staff at Seattle, became the DC there, took over a #1 defense. So the tendency there is, I'm sure, okay, nobody change anything, don't do anything, we've been really good. But then you come here, and obviously they weren't great last year, not asking you to comment on that, but do you find the players are more receptive to change when they didn't have the type of success that they would have liked to have had?
That's a good question. I would say I knew some of the players, at Seattle, because I was there as an assistant with Pete, and then I left for 2 years and then came back. So I didn't know every player there. So, like I did here, it takes some time to build relationships, build some trust as you're going through. And then as far as putting in the package, each year there's a little, different things that you do and wrinkles that you put in. But it was, for me, awesome to see some of the young players really develop. A guy like during the time there, a Cam Chancellor or an Earl Thomas, who were, making their move up. When I got there, we added some players, a Cliff Averill and a Michael Bennett and Chris Clemens. So having some of that crew develop as an attitude of their position, I thought that was super important, that they helped the overall defensive identity. And the same thing here, any good defense I've been a part of, you do have to have an identity. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard Mike talk about that. And it comes in your play style, your attitude, what the group can stand for. And one thing I've been impressed by the group here is their willingness to work. And I said, I don't think we're anywhere near as good as we're going to be, and hopefully that improvement keeps taking place. But I would say, I'm pleased with the effort and the attitude that's gone on so far. And that's why I think if you get that part right, now your identity by getting better and playing faster can come to light.
What do you miss without having Gallimore, and how do you go about replacing him?
Yeah, man, I'm so bummed. I'm glad you brought up Nev. He's just had an outstanding offseason into training camp. The two rookies that have, worked with him, kind of all this time with Osa and Quentin, they've done a good job, and they're almost in the same room with him. Well, not almost. They're in the same room with him every day, and they all kind of are growing into the position together. And so we'll certainly miss Nev's presence and size and strength. He's just got a rare quickness for a guy that big. He's 310, but, can move like a smaller guy. So we'll miss him. The fortunate part is that we're able to get Nev back at some point, and we're going to need him because he's got some rare stuff to him. But in the meantime, I'm pleased with the two young players and where they're at, in terms of their being a part of the rotation to help, pick up the space where Nev was.
How different are those positions, though? Quentin we thought was a nose. And
Yep, he is.
And that's a different spot. So I'm trying to figure out how does he fit into that.
Yep, I think we'll certainly feature him in there, and sometimes it'll be Osa at 3. Sometimes we'll put Carlos Watkins into that spot. So Watkins and Urban and Hamilton and Digazua, Bohanna, those are all ones that I'm now mixing around some people to make sure we get them into the best spots and on the best down and distances as well.
When do you anticipate Tristan being able to fit in the mix there?
Yeah, as soon as, really the guys can hear you Mike and the guys can fill you in on the medical side with him. But once we get him back, obviously we know what kind of quickness he has. So I'd see him being a big part of our nickel package.
How do you determine how much Micah Parsons plays right off the bat? I mean, obviously not playing college football last year. You know, we've heard him on the phone with you wanting to get in more in the preseason, but you're obviously limiting that. How do you know like how much you can put him out there week one, or is it because he's young you can put him out there as much as you want?
Well, I think it really depends, like, how you're performing, with the calls and that, and he's, answered the challenges into that space. As far as how much will go, we'll get that when we see what the packages, are determined by the game. But his conditioning is good. He's putting out at practice to get the conditioning level where he can play extended plays. But like I said earlier, we were referring to Jalen, to have 4 guys at a position that have flexibility, that's a big piece of it. And but we're certainly encouraged where he's at. We've got a long way to go in terms of our whole team identity. But Micah's speed and his physicality is certainly going to be a big part of that.
How do you like where?
You place an emphasis on the defense becoming detail-oriented. Dorrance Armstrong said walking in on details has been a key contributor in his growth this offseason. How have you seen his shift in focus lead to on-field production and consistency?
There is no doubt. I'm glad that you brought up DA. Man, I've been encouraged by the work that he's put in. We ask a lot of him. He's, obviously had a special teams background, and Bones and Matt, they certainly think highly of him, and he's played well on teams. But what I've seen from the spring and into here, really making a push to be, part of the group as a rusher. And so, him and Basham and Bradley and the 3 of them really battling for some spaces, behind Randy and D-Law. Now you got real competition at the spot, and he has really answered the challenge that's come up for him. Sometimes just details, you just need to stay in it and stay in it through the play and stay in it, and you just need it over and over again. But he is definitely a player that has my attention by the work that he's put in.
Azor Kamara, the second-year player, what have you seen from him and his outlook here as the roster tightens?
Yep, and that's this time of year, isn't it, where we get to talk about guys who are really just battling and fighting for it. Some of the things that you've seen from Azor, he's improving, certainly in some of the areas we want. We wanted to see him, be an edge setter in the run game. Could he, establish to have a pass rush move with him? And so missing last year for a player like that, can really set you back when here's a guy who needs developmental time and you miss out on it. And so he's still working into that space, but he's definitely improving.
You've talked a lot about flexibility and versatility. Is there a point where for a player, if you just ask them to do too much, they can't do any of it to their potential, and how do you know when you've reached that point?
Yes, and so, yes, to answer the question, there is it's too much, and usually the younger players hit that wall first, and that kind of mental fatigue of I can't, and you have to force that, and then it's up to us, the coaches, okay, we even had a meeting like that this morning. I want to meet with him individually. This is where we're at. This is what we need you to do, so we can just kind of clear through some of the fog that can take place. A lot of installs. I'm on special teams. I had to do that, and so I saw a few busts in practice, from a couple of players that we've seen them do the responsibility before, and so sometimes there's just too much. And so, how does the saying go? You can't fill a cup that's already full, like there's just overflow of stuff. So when that happens, I think it's time to start clearing the deck and say, okay, what's the most important thing for this game, for this week, and how do you get better?
In your coaching experience, has there been some sort of, I know it's not an exact algorithm, but like, okay, a rookie can handle like 3 different types of things at this position, a veteran 5,
Right.
what's the trends?
The fact that you threw out algorithm just made me nervous to begin with. So I would say, you said there was no math here, but I would say the algorithm is it's individual, and it really depends, because if you look at a guy like Osa Digizua, like he just keeps hammering to go. He keeps, chomping at the bit to get more information, and I'm seeing it kind of go the other way with him, where it's slowing down and he's able to play faster. And that's really what I look to see, because if I'm seeing a player play slowly, that's my conversation with him. Are you not showing your speed or not sure? Because if you're not sure, that can often look like a player doesn't have the speed or what to do it, and he can go. So it's up to me and the staff really to say, man, this looks like you're late on your key, you're late on your read, and now you want to go. So when I'm seeing somebody play slowly and I know they're not, then it's time to, like I said, shave off some things so they can get back to the clarity.
Where are Joseph and Wright in their development?
Can you start again, please?
Where are Joseph and Wright in their development? And when you have young players at that position, do you want to guard against using too many of them, or is it just strictly if you have the talent, you're out
Yeah,
there?
you got to go. You got to go. And I think it goes to say, you probably have heard it before, hey, there's some on-the-job training that takes place, and that goes for all of us in any job we all started. Like, how the hell do I do this? You know, like your first press conference, your first coaching job, you know, whatever it was, there's some learning that goes on. And the jump to the NFL is a big one. And fortunately for us, you know, like at that position, they're able to go against some world-class guys and see where they match up. But that's really what you want to find out. And so sometimes I'll look to see if it's one-on-ones and a guy's counting a line, or I want that opportunity. And that's usually when you found the right person. He's a competitor. He wants a shot at CD. He wants a shot at Michael, to see where you match up and see where you go. And so it kind of helps in the preseason game too. That's why we want to see some of the players in early, especially the younger players. And you've probably seen that with the guys in very early. It's by design.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, you guys have a good one.